First, we have Miss Dottie McKnight. Dottie was head coach from 1971 to 1975.
Yay!
She was at the helm for 4 seasons, and right after that, one of your assistants, Dottie McKnight, was Chris Weller, and she has been inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. 499 wins, 3 Final Fours at Maryland, 8 ACC championships, and an amazing coach. And she won the Coach of the Year award in 1992. And I am honored to say she was my coach at Maryland. We went on that great run, 29-3 back in 1989, and made that run to the Final Four. So Coach Weller, welcome to you. Strong welcome too. And last but certainly not least, there have only been 3 coaches at the helm at Maryland, and Brenda Freeze took over 19 seasons ago. They just surpassed the 500 win mark, now sitting at 505 wins, which is absolutely amazing. Brenda Freeze is in her 19th year, as we said, won the championship in 2006 up there in Boston, and went to 3 Final Fours, 6 Elite Eights, and 8 Sweet 16s, 14 WNBA draft picks, which is absolutely amazing, 12 conference titles as well. And Brenda, we welcome you in.
Thank you very much.
Indeed. Well done.
And next up, well, actually, let's go to Vicki Bullock. Could actually not be with us tonight because she is the head coach at West Virginia Wesleyan. She was not sure, like everything these days, games pop up. She is not able to join us today because the MEC tournament is going on, and it tips off at 7 o'clock tonight. So we wish Vicki the best of luck. A teammate of mine for 3 seasons, a 2-time Olympian, was the all-time leading scorer at Maryland for years and years before Crystal Langhorne and company changed that scenario. But definitely miss Vicki's face here tonight, but just wanted to give her some roses, if you will, and let her know that we all love her and miss her face on this Zoom this evening. And next up,
Christie, she was the second best shooter, right?
And who was the first best, Coach?
Well, who do you think?
You, not me. You were the
I did that to you guys all the time, didn't I?
You did, but we always said,
I'm
like,
sorry.
Oh, we always said, who else could it be then? Like, is that me or that you? But yeah, but you were the leading scorer. You were the leading scorer on your team back in your senior year. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The record books.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, that's a tidbit. And even though, you were letting that thing fly. You did have the wrist. You did have the gooseneck. So I will say that you were the best shooter. But next up, we have Crystal Langhorne. Crystal Langhorne played at Maryland from 2005 to 2008. One of Maryland's top recruits the season before. Maryland was 10-18, but I tell you what, Crystal Langhorne said, I don't care about all that. I'm going to come in there and change things, and change things she did with a crew of young, strong-minded Terps. Went out there in her sophomore season and brought home the first national championship at Maryland in 2006. An amazing, amazing accomplishment. Played in the WNBA just until last year, played for 13 seasons in the league, started with the Mystics and went out to Seattle and won 2 titles with the Seattle Storm, and now recently retired. She is now going to be in the front office working with the Seattle Storm on social justice initiatives, but she is in DC. And Crystal, thank you for joining us tonight. Always a pleasure to see you, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Hey, everybody.
And we have one more.
Let's see you.
And this is the birthday girl today, Kristen Comproy. She has been an amazing shooter. And I know, Coach, you said you were the best shooter, but I tell you what, second in program history with 217 threes. Kristen nailed shot after shot and could just stick it from the outside. She was a Terp from 2015 to 2018. Fourth in program history and 3-point field goal percentage, just a blink over 40% shooter from 3. 3 Big Ten titles during her time and went to the Final Four in 2015, a Big Ten Medal of Honor winner, and currently she is in the medical school at Wake Forest. So Kristen, thank you for joining us. It's been a minute since I've seen you, so happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Excited to see everybody.
This is awesome. So I am definitely honored to be here. Christie Winter Scott, class of 1990 here. A lot of pride in the 50 years of what this program has meant for so many women. And let's go back to Dottie McKnight, when you first started coaching. You also coached field hockey at Maryland, but when you were in charge of so many women during that time, when the opportunities were few, but the mindset was at an all-time high in terms of wanting to compete, what was that like between 1971 and 1975 when you were on the sidelines for field hockey and basketball during that time?
Well, I coached field hockey from 64 to about 68 or 9, and Sue Tyler took over then. Funny, that sport has only had 3 coaches since I started in 64. But I have, these young women worked so hard. They did it all. They had no uniforms. They had no transportation. They had nothing. And they worked so hard. Chris, one of them, she was a senior, and they were just fantastic. And I admired them so much because I had grown up in an area where I had junior high sports with uniforms and officials, so I didn't understand what. And I got here, and they only had interest groups. So I was very impressed with the fact that they were held together by each other, and they learned teamwork. They sure did, by being together, because they were leading themselves.
That's huge. And Coach Weller, you were on the team being coached by Dottie McKnight, but also came back and served as an assistant coach before she stepped down in 1975. But during that time, I know that, you know, you guys used to play at Prinkert Gymnasium. I remember
Field house.
Field house. You told us about Prinkert Fieldhouse. You used to tell us that you guys would go through the window at night and go in and play pickup games. I don't know. They must not have had the surveillance systems like they do now, but I tell you, the love of the game had you all do that, right? You just wanted to play and compete, and it was more about, you know, the strategy and the camaraderie. You guys had a tournament and you slept on the floor on a 2-day tournament there that you won. But what was that love that drew you to the window, to climb through the window and get on that court and play in the middle of the night?
Well, you know, from high school we had nothing, and you know, when Dottie came to Maryland, she was the first person who really supported us. Jim Kehoe was also very helpful, and but just to get people like that to come in and embrace our opportunities. I mean, I was in Worcester Hall right across the street from Prinkert, so we sneak over all the time. But without people like Dottie, who stepped in for zero money, and we would go, I remember going to her office frequently and pleading with her to help us with this, that, or the other thing. And you know, she was just wonderful to us. And you know, she helped us get some support. And because prior to that, we were just on our own. We were doing play days.
Yeah. Wow. And Brenda, when you hear those stories of how tough it was and how things weren't being provided fairly for women who wanted to compete athletically in whatever sport, what does that say about how the game has evolved and how the game has grown over the years? And even from when you first came in 2002, I mean, things have changed since then as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I mean, it's, I can't thank Dottie and Chris enough. The path that they paved before any of us and their teams. And it does. I mean, just it tells you about how much love and passion they had for the game, everything that they had to endure to, they paved the path for where we are today. And it doesn't even seem right to talk about, how we're able to do the things we're able to do because really because of what they've built here at Maryland. And I know we're extremely grateful as a program and as a team and what's come before us. And I think that's why every time we take the court, each and every team, every season, it's just truly an honor, knowing what's come before us and then wanting to, represent Maryland to the highest level.
Well, you most certainly have done that, all three of you, on the grandest stages of the game. And with that, Crystal, the amount of tradition and the success of the tradition, what was that drew you to Maryland, knowing that the tradition was rich, the success had been very plentiful, but there have been a couple of years that weren't on the winning side. And when you were coming through high school, coming out of New Jersey, and you were being recruited by everyone, obviously, what was it that separated Maryland and made you come on down to College Park?
It was Brenda. She emphasized what the program was and we had a little dip in what the program could be again. And I just wanted to come back and build the program back up. And, we were able to do that.
And Kristen, and the same kind of thing, like when you saw Crystal Langhorne and Christie Tolliver, Marissa Coleman, Laura Harper, Shada Ron, that crew go out there and win a national championship in 2006. First of all, how old were you during that time? But how did that motivate you to make your choice to become a Terp?
I was 10, just for reference point. I think it was a constant reminder for us. The banners hung in the gym, the court as we walk into Xfinity, all of the bits and pieces of the tradition and the tracks that have been laid before us were motivation, especially when those guys would come back and practice with us and really whip us into shape, to be quite honest. I think it's a nice reminder, like they didn't get there off of somebody else's back, and that was our job to make our own legacy and what were we doing with the opportunity.
No question. I remember, Coach Weller, you probably remember this as well. Tara Heiss and Jazz Parazic would come in and tear us apart in practices. They were Olympic level players, and they came back and just showed us what the actual pride of the program was all about. So Kristen, I definitely understand what that felt like. But Dottie, when you hear what the student athletes in the last couple of eras of Maryland women's basketball, when you hear them say, it's the tradition, it's the coaches, and it's what Maryland means, what does that mean to you to hear that from them?
Well, it's very exciting, very rewarding. I think we all love Maryland and its traditions, and to know that they have embraced that is very important. And the way they play together, I'm thinking this year's team, honestly, they really play together. It's just marvelous to watch them. When they ran into all that defense yesterday, I mean, they coped and they were terrific. And
Coach Weller, I know that you made so many sacrifices, I know, early on in your career. And, you said you would save money by making peanut butter sandwiches for the students on road trips. He made about $9,000 a year. And, the Denny's was a spot that was frequently visited, and our team as well. But anyway, I digress. But I know he did that. But I know that the sacrifice was made so that now the game has just grown leaps and bounds because of the sacrifices that were made during that time. What was it about your mindset to understand that at that time? Like, you wanted to save that money so that the program would have enough money for uniforms and then earn more money for warm-ups and uniforms. Like, what was that about you that you wanted to pioneer for women in sports that way?
Gee, that's a tough question to answer. It just being surrounded by people like Dottie McKnight and my mom and dad, and it just there were just so many people that were interested in trying to have opportunities, and it was just so exciting to have an opportunity. I taught in high school, and they had days. I think I told you that. So I really. And I tell everybody, I think my biggest contributions to the sport were probably when I was in high school, a high school teacher, because they started out, they had play days for girls, period, the end. And we finally got a county tournament going. And then, when it came back to Maryland, we sort of went from there. But I think the high school teachers that put forth for nothing, they don't get any money. They only get the satisfaction of seeing young students grow. Yes. And that's why you do it.
Yes, and no question about it. I know, Brenda, when you first got the job, I know Coach Weller had the 499 wins, and you offered to Debbie Al, who was the AD at that time, you said, whenever my first win comes, can I give it to Coach Weller so that she could have the 500th win? And Coach Weller, I know that you said, you didn't do it for those wins, but you did it like what you just said, like for the empowerment and the confidence and everything for the young women. But Brenda, the selflessness of that notion, although the NCAA said you can't gift a win that way or it doesn't transfer over, but to have that kind of selflessness, how has that attitude from that first year and that first moment transcended over your 19-year career?
Yeah, well, first Chris and I have talked about, and we love the fact that she got to stay at 499. That's a number that people remember. But, I can talk about the selflessness of, Dottie and Chris, that have come before me. And, to see all three of us on the Zoom tonight, it speaks volumes of what it's been like in my 19 years here at Maryland. It's the people, it's the relationships, it's everyone that's on the Zoom tonight, and these great coaches that have come before me, that have created, the brand, the players, the families, really that's why we're all in it, is for the relationships and the people that we get to have as a part of it. And I think, the selflessness is, something that I think is really amazing to see. It's something I truly believe in, but I know with my time that I've spent with Chris and Dottie, it's we're just kind of passing the baton because we all believe in it.
And that's something that is transferable, right? And Crystal and Kristen both, I mean, your next chapters in life are about serving others, right? With you, Crystal, at the Seattle Storm with social justice initiatives, and Kristen, you're in the medical field and, in medical school at Wake Forest. So Crystal, with that being said, how much of that kind of give back as a student athlete happened for you, but how much of that give back mentality has carried you to the position that you now hold in the WNBA with the Seattle Storm?
Yeah, it just shows it's not just about you, but how you can impact people's lives. And I think that's very important. I mean, Maryland's helped, teach me that throughout my whole career. I'm there, just really trying to help others and do better, and just trying to make society better. I know that sounds kind of like deep, but that's what we're really trying to do as a whole, trying to change people's lives and improve people's lives.
And Kristen, being in the medical field, I mean, you can almost say the same exact thing, although it's, it's helping to physically save people's lives. How important has that been for you to be on that track and understand that you're in the front lines in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the very foundation of why I chose Maryland. I was very upfront from the beginning. I wanted to pursue medicine. I was told many times that doing that and playing Division I basketball was not going to be possible. But Coach B was all for it, and she believed in me that it was more about basketball. And especially as women, like, yes, the game has come so far, but really our options are not the same as they are for men. And so she was all for me pursuing that next step for me, and that being the same foundation of service to others.
And Crystal and Kristen, I want to frame this question for both of you. Can you go back right now and speak your heart to Dottie McKnight, Chris Weller, and Brenda Freeze in terms of what it means for you to have them holding the torch for all the things that you just said about service to others, selfless mentality, and team?
Yeah, I think each one of them have made sacrifices, huge sacrifices. And it's helped grow the women's game. It's helped women as a whole. And I mean, I'm sure I could speak for everyone here today. We can't thank you guys enough. I mean, you guys mean so much to the program. You've built the program. And, that's why we're here today.
You know that your attitude is why we did everything. And you mean so much. It's just to see you all embracing what we embraced. And, it was just something, it wasn't any sacrifice on our part at all. I got so much more than I ever gave. And it's just wonderful to see you all grow. That, to me, that's all that matters.
Coach Weller, I think you saying that in itself is just an incredible testament to all three of you and your heart for us as people. I had never heard those stories about you guys sneaking into the gym and making the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And that's just, I can't even wrap my head around that just because of my experience. And I know that my experience was built off of the work that y'all did. And it's incredible to me, that just utter service mindset that each one of you have had to grow and develop the game of basketball, the University of Maryland, and just empowering women in general.
And Dottie, when you see the WNBA and you see the Maryland alums who are competing
wow. Yeah.
winning championships, how amazing is that for you?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'd like to say one thing about Chris. I don't know if you all know it. And Chris, forgive me, I can't remember the name of the high school where you taught for a number of years and coached so successfully. She was inducted into their Athletic Hall of Fame about a year ago, I think. I was privileged to go to the ceremony, which was lovely. And so her success went from playing to coaching high school to Maryland.
I love that.
She also was probably the best shot I ever coached.
Not probably. I tell you, Christie, right? You're the best. You have to think you are.
I saw it a little bit. She would shoot around a little before practice, and we're like, "Oh, coach has a little trigger. He's a little has a little wrist action there." It was great stuff.
I'm really not as egotistical as I'm sounding. I hope.
No, it was great. But I tell you what, Coach, you shared with us, not just the stories about you sneaking into Prinkert Fieldhouse, but also, the stories of Pat Summitt and how you all were great friends, and Teresa Grint and Vivian Stringer and all of these iconic women in our game who had the same mindset that you did. But what was it about those women during that time when you were coaching over 27 years on the sideline at Maryland? But what was it about the connection you had with those pioneers of our game?
Gee, I just think that we all were grateful that we had an opportunity, and we wanted to make sure that we made the best of it. And that's why there was very little competition amongst us, because we all just were so grateful to have finally come from play days to real games. And I think that's what allowed us to just unite and continue to grow together.
Right. And I know, Brenda, you shared this that you played 6v6. I know, Coach Weller, you played 6v6 also when you competed early. So Brenda, how do you see how much the game has changed? And obviously I know you're super proud, like year after year, you have 5 or 6 representatives in the WNBA finals at the professional level, but they all come back. They all, like Crystal and Kristen, they all come back when they're in town. They come back and give back the stories of their time. But how important is that for you to keep that light torch on for the alums, and how important that connection is, and how to keep that going, how to keep that alive, and like you said, just continuing to pass the baton in that way?
Yeah, really important. I mean, we always share when, a player, signs with us to come to Maryland, it's not just for, 4 or 5 years, it's for a lifetime. And, again, I go back to the relationships that we spend so much time in the recruiting process when you get to know these student athletes and their families and their siblings, and you go through so many things in a career in 4 or 5 years. It really is incredible. I would be sad if our players didn't come back, to be quite honest. I think that probably tells you a lot about your program. But I always want them to feel like this is their second home to this day. And I know Chris and Dottie are the same way. If I get a text, a phone call from any, former player, any alum, it's going to be responded to as soon as possible. I mean, that's an extension of our family. And has always been, the most important thing.
Dottie, going back to you real quickly, what would you say to the game of women's basketball today? Like the players who are playing today, what would you say to them as advice? And Coach Weller, you're next on that same question.
Love every minute of it. Play hard, play fair, learn, and love it.
And Coach Weller?
Wow, how do you top that? Absolutely, it's just, it's a wonderful opportunity, and just give your heart and soul to making it the best it could possibly be, and not just for you, but for all those around you.
Right, and Brenda, just tagging onto that, I know you've seen like the youngsters coming through now, the recruits, the kids who now are in high school, and what kind of advice would you give maybe like an elementary school young lady who has only known the WNBA, and they see the bright lights and they see the Maryland players running through the smoke and it's all exciting, but what advice would you give them in terms of what it truly takes to be successful at the next level in college, but also at the next level in the WNBA?
Yeah, through all that glitz and glamour that they're seeing, the work, it's a lot of hard work that's going to take place behind the scenes. And, just like Chris and Dottie had said, it's, you better love the game, because if you're not, willing to work, and if you're not passionate about this game and love this game, it's going to be really, really hard for you to make it to the highest levels. So just fall in love with it, because, then it's never going to seem like you've had a day of work.
Mm-hmm. And I know Coach Weller used to say that all the time as well, that she never felt like it was work because it was a passion. And Crystal, when you recently stepped away from the professional game after 13 years in the WNBA. And I know the last couple of years, I've seen you in the ears of these young players, and you've been giving so much tremendous advice. Tactical advice, I understand, like during the game, but now that you have recently stepped away, and probably now because of all of us having time to think things through a little bit more, what can you say to the next WNBA players who are about to get drafted this season, and what it takes to maintain a professional career?
Yeah, it flies by. It's been 13 years, but I'm like, it went by so quickly. But like B said, you can't cheat the grind. I know, I tell like a lot of players I meet with now, it's like, there's a lot of social media and, like you said, glitz and glamour. It's big now. But you can't cheat being in the gym. And you don't have to have a camera every time you're in the gym. So that's kind of my thing. I'm kind of old school with that. kind of thought process, but you got to put in the work. I mean, if you want to be good, you have to get in the gym and, you know, leave social media alone a little bit. So that's my point on that.
And Kristen, you know, you said that a lot of naysayers said that you couldn't do both. Like you couldn't have the career that you wanted in the medical field and be a successful Division I athlete, but you know, 3 Big Ten titles and a Final Four appearance later, and you're in medical school now. I mean, what kind of advice do you have to the young players coming through right now who may be hearing the naysayers in their head? What was that about you to kind of put the blinders on and do what you had a purpose in doing?
I think it goes back to sound like a broken record now, that passion. If you really are passionate about what you're doing and it's your own motivation, not because of those outside glitz and glamour, then no one can tell you what you can and cannot do. If you put in the time and you put in the right goals to get you there, then you are the only person that's in your way. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of young people now see all the glitz and glamour and really buy into that's their motivation. And I'm a little bit worried to see if there's some burnout, because you can't live up to all of that. You have to have that own intrinsic motivation to keep going.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And social media, like you said, Crystal, is a big game changer in a good way, but also in a not so good way when you're just fixated on that. I know that we have some questions in queue, and we have a Q&A segment that we would like to open up our guests to now. If you all would send your questions in the chat if you have not done so already, and we will be able to get that for you. Let me just check this. Yes, please direct your questions to
We have a question from Pat. She wants to know, why do we count the beginning of Maryland women's basketball as 1971 when there was a team in 1963? I don't know if Coach McKnight or Coach Weller want to take that one.
Well, the main reason is that in 64, and they were playing even before I got here, but I guess I was the first coach. And that was 1964-65 school year. We were not funded or a part of the athletic department. We got some funding from physical education. The Women's Recreation Association funded, I'm sure, paid for officials and so forth. So I think that's the reason why technically it started. That's fine. 50 years is good.
Thank you, Coach. And another question here from Dan. What was the first year a women's basketball game was played in Coldfield House?
Wow.
In Cole. I know the first televised game was
I don't know.
1975.
Absolutely, yeah, that was, but that may have, and now you're testing my memory. We were practicing in Cole before that nationally televised game for several years. Actually, the first year Lefty was there, we were in there sharing space with Lefty. So shortly after we were part of the athletic department, I would guess 1970, maybe 71.
We have another question here that's going to be for each of you, including Christie. Most memorable game you were a part of. Coach Weller, would you like to start us off?
Okay, well, it includes Coach Weller, so there's that. I'm gonna say it was the game in 1989 for the Final Four. 3 of the other teams had already punched tickets. We played at 9 o'clock at Texas, sold out down there. They hadn't lost a game there in like 2 years. It was insanely packed. We had our rebounders there in the little section, and we had our band over there going off, but you could barely hear them because I think it was 13 or 14,000 people in there. Vicki Bullitt and I were about 5 feet apart from each other, trying to talk on defense or something like that. And I could only see her mouth moving. She could only see my mouth moving. Like I couldn't hear anything. And every time they scored a bucket, the ground was shaking. like literally, or that's what my emotional response to the moment, but it felt like crazy. But we ended up winning that game. It was close at the end, maybe 6 points, 5 points, something like that. I remember I was on the free throw line at the end of that, and Coach Weller said to me, I think they called a timeout trying to freeze me or something like that. I was a junior, and we were at the timeout, and Coach was like, well, you're gonna make these free throws. After Christie makes, no, she said, after Christie makes these free throws, and then I had the water in my hand like this, and she kind of hit my hand, like, and you're gonna make them, and the water kind of like went everywhere on my leg and everything like that. She was like, and you're gonna make it. I'm like, all right, you know. So I go back out there, and my parents were gonna come to the Final Four tournament, you know, had we qualified, and you know, I go out, and my mom to this day says her nose was on the screen of the TV, and she said she knew my rhythm because I did the same thing every time. And she said I did it too fast. She was like, oh my gosh, I thought you were gonna miss them because you did your dribbles too fast or something. But I made both free throws, and the buzzer went off, and all of the Texas fans were standing there after the game. Remember that, Coach Weller? They were all standing there in complete silence, and they were like this, and we were cutting the nets down, and we were like, let's get out of here. And we had the nets. We're like, let's take the nets. We're like, see you guys later. And we just raced out off the floor. But it was like, that was probably the most incredible win to be a part of as a student athlete, not only qualifying for the Final Four, because the year before we lost to Auburn in that same game. We got measured for rings and everything my sophomore year, and we didn't get it. We played at Auburn, and it was, yeah, they had like the Mayola Bolton and all those guys, crazy. And yeah, so that was the moment. So we got over the hump, and we were 29-3 that year, went to the Final Four, and that was an experience I'll never forget.
Crystal, I think we might be able to guess what your most memorable game was, but
yeah, it was the Natty Championship. So yeah, that was the best game for me.
This is a hard one. I can think of a lot came to mind immediately. One of them would be when we were at Louisville. I think it was my junior year. They had a solid team. We were on the road. It was just such an incredible environment to have the entire arena against you, and we just ground out the win on the road. And I remember everybody just being so tired after the game that we just couldn't even think straight because we had worked so hard to get that win. And I remember just being so tired, but it felt so gratifying to get there. That one was just, I don't know why that came to mind first, but the other one was obviously Madison Square Garden against UConn. Unfortunately, we didn't win, but we gave them quite the run for their money, and we weren't expected to. So that was a pretty incredible experience as well.
We've heard a lot about the hardships of the past, but especially this year and this week, like it's unprecedented challenges. So how do you get your players ready to play in a week after a 5-day road trip, then to leave again on Wednesday and Thursday, and then fly home Friday to play Saturday before postseason? Like, how do you keep them ready to go?
Well, I mean, you just continue to remind them they're not tired, even though they might, they're in college and, they're between 18 and 23. So they shouldn't be as tired as us older ones. But, we really condition ourselves. I mean, this team is in phenomenal shape. Postseason, you have to be in this kind of grind. So I think for us, it's a mental side now for us. Of understanding when we go to postseason Big Ten tournament, if you want to keep winning, you have to play back-to-back days, and NCAAs, it's every other day you're playing, to be prepared. But, proud of this group. I mean, I thought it was a really tough stretch with 4 games in 9 days and being on the road for the last 5, and just finding ways to be able to get it done through a really tough stretch. I think it shows a lot about, the resiliency and the, mental toughness of this group this season.
Thank you. Our next question is for Coach Weller and Coach McKnight. Hold on one second here. When you were coaching, could you have imagined the level of skill and athleticism that players have today? And then also in those early years, did you recruit players to come to the university? Did you recruit from the student body, or did you have tryouts?
How do you want to go first?
No, we took everybody. And when it started, the vast majority of the women in the group who had started themselves were physical education majors. I mean, that was their uniform, their blue shorts and their white shirts. And so we didn't recruit, and I didn't anyway. In my years, I did not recruit anyone. I certainly encouraged anyone who came around and asked them to join and hoped they would, and check them out. And if I had them in class and they seemed to have some ability, then I might lure them into the practice gym, but that was it. Chris's turn.
What's that?
Did you recruit, Chris?
I didn't recruit that much in the beginning. You know, you had to
No budget.
Get eventually into it, but you know, early on, you played with the people that were there, and then you started to get into some of the recruiting. It wasn't like it is now. So.
No.
A couple of the best games I saw as a student at Coldfield House were games against Tennessee and UVA in the early 90s. Were there any games that were particularly memorable for you that were pivotal for the development of Maryland during your career?
In '78, I had to do a year-by-year record, go back into my computer, get some of these things I couldn't remember. But I know in 1978, we won it was the first ACC championship they ever had for women's basketball, and we won that. And so that was very, very significant, obviously. I don't know, and being in the very first NCAA Final Four. That was like 1982. So it's a good thing I have this list here, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to answer these questions.
Coach, I remember you saying that there. Oh, sorry. Coach, I just remember you saying to us that I think it was a year or two before I got there, but you told us that you overheard someone calling the score in when you beat, I believe, UVA on the phone, and they said the score the wrong way because they couldn't believe that Maryland was the one who won. Do you remember that? Like that story? Like you said, you were walking by and someone was calling in the score, and they said Virginia over Maryland. Oh, I mean, Maryland beat Virginia. They said the score like that because they didn't believe. I think it was 84 maybe when you won the ACC tournament, or 85. One of them.
Well, I don't remember.
I'm sorry. That's right. No, I remember you telling us that, and the pride, and you said that's right, Maryland won that game, and I remember how proud we all were and how proud you were telling us that, but we appreciate the stories.
Okay, so for Kristen, what are your personal career goals?
It's a very timely question as I am building my 4th year schedule to apply for residency. But I think I want to do orthopedic surgery and potentially work as a team doctor, similar to all the physicians that took care of me. It's such a unique opportunity and privilege to be a physician where you get to step into people's lives at some of their lowest points, especially an athlete. I think any injury is pretty horrible. Even when you take a step back and realize it's not the end of the world, it still feels like it. So having the experience of having been an athlete would provide me with some skills to better help people and athletes get through that. So right now, that's what I'm thinking, but that could change tomorrow at this point.
Have either of you talked to Shay Duran lately, and how's she doing?
I'm going to jump in on that one because I just spoke to her today. She's doing really well. She works for a venture capitalist in Israel. And so she's just living a normal life and working, and she's doing great. She's in Israel, she's married, and she's doing great.
This is for Christie. How did you decide to come to Maryland? I know you're from Northern Virginia, but how were you recruited?
Oh boy, it was totally different than how it is now. Like Coach Weller said, just with all of the, the texting and the ways to communicate. So it was actually a little bit overwhelming, and not saying that in any kind of pompous manner. it was pretty overwhelming. I mean, AAU was different then, where there was only like one team in this area and everyone on that team went Division I. Now there may be 2 or 3 players, from each team that they go to the next level at the Division I level. But we had like a really great AAU team, and we played with the Vogues, and we traveled all over the place and played. And I think it was, it was overwhelming to me because I would get letters all the time and calls all the time. And I didn't say no to any home visits. So I think the entire month of October, I had a home visit every day. And like no one advised me on how to go through the recruiting process. And they were like, well, we'd like to come for a recruiting visit, Andy Landers at Georgia. And I'm like, okay, sure. But I'm like, I'm not going that far, but you can come over. I didn't ever say like, I'm not going that far, but I don't know. I didn't know how to say no when they asked that, because, they're adults. It's Andy Landers and it's Coach Weller. It's like Debbie Ryan and all these just iconic coaches. I watch the game all the time. So, I saw them all playing. So it was crazy for me in particular. And it came down to Maryland and NC State for me. Kay Yao was there, bless her heart, God rest her soul. But it was those 2 schools. And I think for me, what made the decision for me was Coach Weller and the staff, and the easy drive for my parents to come see me play. And, you had to fly to Raleigh. I went on my visit down there and I'm like, okay, number one, you have to fly here. It's like taking notes. I'm looking out the window like, okay, this is a little far, but it's whatever. But I loved the spirit of the campus. I went to the football game. I went to a tailgate. I think I stayed up giggling with Monica. She was like a senior that year. Monica Gannon, yes. But she was excellent. Like, she was so funny, and I just felt like I could be myself. I think everywhere else I was like all like buttoned up, and like I didn't say 2 words. I was kind of quiet, and no one can believe that I was quiet, like because of what I do now. But I was pretty quiet, so I didn't really say unless I was comfortable. And I was comfortable at Maryland, and I think I was like laughing with no noise coming out all night. We were like just this. I don't know. I could just be myself, and this is silly, but we're at the football game in the student section. Everyone's jumping around, having this great time. The sun was out. It was just, at Bird Stadium, how it was just like so great. And I know it's not Bird anymore, but it's Bird to me. So, I got hit in the head with a plastic cup at the football game, and everybody's laughing at me because, it gets crazy over there. And no one threw it like directly at me on purpose, but it just ended up like knocking me in the head. And the sound of that was silly. And I could just laugh, and I was like bent over laughing. So I think just me being able to be myself, number one, but also the spirit and, the camaraderie that the team had. I watched the practices, and they didn't go soft in the practice. They were like, listen, we're running. I saw them play USC when Cheryl Miller was there, and Cheryl Miller was my favorite player to watch. And they had a Thanksgiving tournament, and coach was like, we play USC in this tournament. It'd be great for you to come see us play. They're one of the best teams in the country and everything. I'm like, I'm there. And I sat right there with my eyes. I don't think I blinked the whole time. I think I was in my senior year in high school, and I loved it. And, the practices were hard, but I'm like, I don't care. I want to play. And, it was just, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. But, I love that Coach Weller, held the players accountable and really made them better. They weren't going to go in and go halfway, or, we have recruits here, so let's not show the real side. No, it was the real side. And I appreciated that of it. And I wanted to get better. I wanted to get stronger. I wanted to, win. And those are all the things, I hope I got better, but those are, I definitely got stronger because of the weight room. And I was 136 pounds at 6'1", coming in as a freshman. So I was a rail. But I had to have gotten stronger. So that's that. But Coach Weller, and the way that she taught the game, the way that she had life lessons within the game, that's what was the difference for me and between NC State and Maryland.
Crystal, can you talk about, is there a friendly competition among Terps in the WNBA?
It depends, like, I guess who you're closer with. Like, I would joke with KT or Riss. I would talk to AT on the court, but like we weren't like jokey on the court. So it kind of just depends like me and Tiana know each other, but we actually don't really speak on the court. So it just depends who you're playing against and like who you're close with.
Is it always kind of fun when you see another Terp or someone you kind of know on the other side?
Oh yeah, no, it's always great. I love seeing Terps in the league. So whenever I see people, usually before COVID, I would usually go out to eat with the Terps, like in whatever city we were in. But you know, it was nice in the bubble. Like I would see Terps everywhere. I would see Kyla, you know, it was nice. It was her rookie year, and I think it helped her seeing familiar faces. So it was cool. Yeah.
First of all, hey, this has been so amazing. Number one, hopefully I don't get choked up. Coach Weller, you know, it's hard for me to like not get teary, but you know, I coached alongside of Coach Weller for 5 years, and I know, you know, she had that terrible accident, and we were just so thrilled that you were able to join us and share your passion and continued love of the game, and not just the wins, but not just the wins, but the strategy behind the love of the game that you have, but also because of your force, you have permitted the game of women's basketball to be taken seriously. And Dottie McKnight, we thank you for, you know, just staying the course during that time when it wasn't easy for women to be athletic and to be on a team. And Coach Weller, I just thank you again. And Brenda Freeze, I mean, you have just taken everything and just care for the program that has meant so much to many. I'm gonna make it through this part, I'm sorry. But it has meant so much to many. And it is just, it's a blessing to see what you are continuing to do with the program. And like Kristen said, like the naysayers will always have something to say, but you know, they're not the ones doing things. So just to, you know, like you say, to like lean in, your shoulders back and take on all challenges. It's an inspiration. As a mom, you know, I know you have the twin boys and they're teenagers now, but just to see you continue to walk in your purpose is something that's motivating to me. And Crystal, I know you said when you see familiar faces, things light up for you in the WNBA, and excuse me, and to cover you in the WNBA is a treasure for me, especially when you were here in DC. But now when you come back to games, it's like I see you and we're both like, hey, it's something, even though we didn't, you know, cross paths as players, thank goodness for me. But we just thank you for your courage and everything that you have done over your career and what you will continue to do in the WNBA with the Seattle Storm and the social justice initiatives. And Kristen, happy birthday to you. I know we've taken up your birthday evening a bit, but it has been so refreshing to see that you are on the path that you want to be on and that you have been able to do what you want to do in life. And it just goes back to what Chris, Dottie, and Brenda have laid the foundation mentally to do when you approach everything that you have approached and done it with class. And everyone on this panel, I can say the same thing for everyone has done it with class, with resiliency and persistence. And those are the qualities of winners. And everyone on here, you guys are winners in life. And that's what truly, truly matters. And that can't be quantified. So we appreciate you all joining us for the Chat with Legends tonight.